This puzzle is a fascinating adventure into the geometry of parallel lines, inspired by the humble necktie. But first, who is the Somerton Man, and why is his necktie even a puzzle? He was an unidentified man found dead on Somerton Beach, Australia in 1948. Over 70 years later, he was finally identified as Charles Webb. Before that was known, a big question was, could his ties give a clue as to his origin? I started investigating the case of the Somerton Man in 2007. Stumped for ideas, around 2010, I stared at his photo looking for clues about his origin. I wondered if his striped tie had any significance. Then it struck me the stripes slant in the opposite direction to what we normally see in Australia. So I read about the history of striped ties and found that Australians follow the British tradition of stripes, going right to left, and it is the Americans who traditionally wear their stripes in the opposite direction. It's rather like the convention of driving cars on the left or right. And the Somerton Man's tie stripes follow the US convention. In the USA, this particular tie's color pattern is called Old Brightonian. Now, the conventional way to refer to the British tie stripe direction is to say heart to sword. Why is that? Because if we draw a line between heart and sword, British stripes have the same slant as a line drawn between heart and sword, as shown here. Let's take a look at a sample of US presidents and British prime ministers. I've missed out many, as not all were actually into striped ties. This illustrates they kept their tie stripe traditions. On the top row we have US presidents Calvin Klein, John F. Kennedy, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush Sr., and Bill Clinton. On the bottom we have UK Prime Ministers Neville Chamberlain, Clement Attlee, Harold Macmillan, John Major, Tony Blair, and Gordon Brown. The tradition was fairly strict from the 1920s to the 1980s, but as we get into more modern times, you can spot both types of ties in both countries. Perhaps due to modern trade, ties can come from anywhere these days. Both these presidents wear British stripes much of the time. This illustrates that you can't rely on this tradition anymore today. But back in 1948, it was a reasonably solid tradition. Now here is a photo taken in the early 1980s of the Somerton Man's possessions held in a police storage room. The man had travelled from wherever he came from just before he died, and that's why he had a suitcase. Notice here is the old Brightonian tie he was wearing when found dead. But here is another striped tie. Here is a non-striped tie, so we can ignore that. Here are two other striped ties. So let's blow up the images of his 4 striped ties. Unfortunately, this suitcase and contents began to smell around the 1980s, and the police decided to throw all his stuff out. It was never classed as a homicide, and so there was no imperative to keep his possessions. So all we have is the police photo to go by. Here's the puzzle. Is it possible to tell if these ties have a UK or a US stripe? This was important as it might have been a clue as to the man's origins. What does your intuition say? Is it impossible because we have no idea of the initial orientation of the ties? Or is it possible? Most people at first think it's impossible, and so did I when I first looked at this, but that's wrong. Luckily, a sneaky geometric trick occurred to me in a flash of inspiration. If you've already figured out the trick, well done. And the trick I used to solve this problem is something scientists call invariance. What properties of the stripes are invariant to the orientation? That's what we will now work out. As we can see here, slanted stripes are really interesting, as the slant direction is invariant to whether I turn the tie upside down or flip it over. If I rotate the tie to any angle, I can easily rotate it back and see the stripes are unchanged. So the stripes are totally invariant to any linear transformation in space. The only way to flip them is to look in a mirror, but that is not the issue here. So using this trick, we can figure out stripe direction. Notice we can work out the last 3 ties because we can see the stripes. Unfortunately, the first tie is so tangled we don't see clear stripes in the first place. Here we can easily see the direction of slant for 3 ties, and due to invariance, it doesn't matter that we don't know their correct overall orientation. And it doesn't matter that we can't work out the tangled old Brightonian tie, because we have another photo of him wearing it, luckily. So we already know that it has US stripes. So here's the final answer. 2 of his ties follow the US and 2 the UK convention. So the bottom line is we have a null result. We can't use this information alone to indicate whether he was from the US or not. We had to search for clues elsewhere for his origin. By using DNA on the 26th of July 2022, his identity was revealed as Charles Webb from Australia. So what was he doing with 2 American ties? Well, it turns out some of Charlie's possessions had the name Keane written on them, and he had a nephew, John Keane, that was posted for some time in World War II in Chicago for training. When he died, all his possessions were sent home to Australia. It appears Charlie was given these. Can you spot the deliberate mistake in this video? I said this president was Calvin Klein. It's actually Calvin Coolidge. Here's something to ponder on. Can you think of any problems in math or science that at first look too complicated to solve? Then by invoking invariance, the solutions fall into place easily. Feel free to leave a comment.